It was just a look, but the kind that tells you something in your life is about to change forever. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. She couldn't explain it, but in that moment, her stomach tightened, as if the world paused only so she could notice what she had been ignoring for years. There was a heavy silence, an uncomfortable pause, and then he said it. "You can't even buy pads without asking me first." The sentence hit her like an invisible blow, sharp, cold, impossible to forget. But why can a simple sentence break someone so? And why can a look, even before any words, warn us that something is very wrong? The first question has a painful truth, because it was never about money, it was about control, and she knew it. And the second has an even harder truth. The body feels danger long before the mind understands it. She took a deep breath, like someone trying to find air after being hit. He turned away, as if he had said something ordinary, but nothing about that moment was ordinary. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, the daylight dimmer. Suddenly, she realized how small she had become inside her own life. With her heart racing, she wondered if a marriage could change with just one sentence. And the answer came when she caught her reflection in the window. Tired, faded, far too used to being silent. In that reflection, she realized the pain didn't come only from what he said, but from everything she had allowed for so many years. While he walked to the bedroom as if nothing had happened, she remained still, trying to understand when she stopped being the protagonist of her own story. She had no idea that this sentence would become the push she needed, not to break her, but to wake her up. After Roberto walked into the bedroom, Clara remained in the hallway, feeling the weight of something she still couldn't fully understand. His sentence replayed in her mind as if it had been carved into the kitchen clock showed nearly 6 in the evening, but she barely noticed time passing. The distant sound of cars outside felt disconnected from her reality. It was as if the entire house had been dipped into a strange kind of silence, one that made it obvious that something was fundamentally wrong. In the days that followed, Clara noticed small changes, subtle details, but heavy. Roberto began asking things he never asked before. "Where are you going? How long will it take? Why do you need that now?" His questions carried a tone she didn't recognize. It wasn't concern. It was surveillance. Clara started observing him more closely. She noticed how Roberto walked with stiff, harsh steps, as if he were constantly on the verge of either breaking or collapsing. He arrived home irritated, dropped his keys on the table with unnecessary force, and stared at his own hands as though searching for answers he couldn't find. She also noticed how he avoided meeting her eyes since the day he told her she couldn't buy pads without asking. Maybe he knew he had crossed a line. On a rainy morning while fixing her daughter's hair for school, Clara felt her chest tighten. The little girl looked at her and asked, with pure innocence, if everything was okay. Clara smiled, a soft, fragile smile that didn't reach her eyes, and said yes. The child ran off to grab her backpack, satisfied. And in that small moment, Clara realized she was tired of pretending. She went out to buy bread, and hurried footsteps approached behind her. It was Mrs. Lucia, the elderly neighbor who always carried a cloth bag embroidered with flowers. The woman gently held Clara's arm and said, "You look more worn out. Something happened?" Clara tried to smile, but the neighbor's eyes were too kind, too direct. Her mask slipped for just a second. She didn't say everything, but she said enough for Mrs. Lucia to understand that something was wrong at home. Mrs. Lucia tightened her grip affectionately. "My dear, no woman should feel afraid inside her own home." The words settled inside Clara like cold air entering through an open window. She didn't cry, but something within her shifted for the first time in years, a part of her that refused to disappear. On her way back, Clara passed a small sewing shop. The sound of machines, the scent of new fabric, and the colorful threads displayed in the window stirred memories she didn't know she still carried. Before marriage, she used to sew simple dresses to earn a little extra money. She loved it. Creating something with her hands made her feel as if she belonged somewhere. Looking at that window brought back a fragment of the woman she once was. That afternoon, while Roberto was at work, Clara opened an old box hidden in the back of a closet. Inside, she found needles, 2 pieces of light blue satin, and a small notebook filled with dress patterns. Touching the fabric stirred a mix of sadness and rage. It felt like touching the version of herself she abandoned to fit into a life that no longer made. She decided to try. She sewed slowly at first, afraid of making mistakes. But the moment she heard the familiar sound of the thread sliding through the fabric, she felt a softness she hadn't known in years. Each stitch seemed to mend wounds she never addressed. The rhythm of the needle and thread gave her a sense of direction, like finding a path she had forgotten. When the dress was ready, simple, delicate, she took a picture and sent it to an acquaintance who sold clothes online. Minutes later, a message arrived. "Do you take custom orders? I have clients who would love this." Clara stared at the screen with her heart racing. She felt alive in a way she had not felt in a long time. But when Roberto returned that night, she sensed she could not keep this hidden for long. He noticed he was different. The way she walked, the way she held her cup, the way she breathed. "What did you do today?" he asked, suspicious. "Just worked a little," she said, trying to sound casual. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing else. Later, in the middle of the night, Clara woke to a noise. Roberto was sitting in the living room, staring into nothing. His expression carried something deeper than anger. It looked like fear, an old fear, dark and nameless. His hands trembled slightly as he rubbed them together. Clara watched him from the doorway. For the first time, she realized the monster in their home wasn't him. It was something inside him. Something she didn't understand yet but was beginning to recognize. He was harsh, controlling, rough, but he was also a man carrying a past that weighed more than he could handle. And in that quiet, sleepless night, Clara understood that her story was about to shift again. And this time, she would not play the silent role anymore. Clara stood at the doorway, watching Roberto as if seeing him through new eyes. He sat on the couch with his elbows on his knees, head hanging forward, as though carrying a weight far too heavy for one person. His breathing was short, uneven, almost desperate. She had never seen him like this. It wasn't anger. It was something else, something deeper. The dim light in the living room cast long shadows across his face, revealing the exhaustion he had always tried to hide. Clara stepped forward carefully, moving like someone approaching a wounded creature. Roberto didn't even notice her. He stayed frozen, staring into nothing. "Roberto," she whispered. He lifted his head slowly, as if waking from a nightmare. His eyes were red and hollow, not from crying, but from sheer exhaustion. "You shouldn't be awake," he murmured, voice rough and low. Clara felt how strange that sentence sounded. It was as if he were protecting something, not her. She sat on the opposite end of the couch, keeping a small distance. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Neither could I." This time, the silence between them wasn't hostile. It was dense, almost physical. Clara looked at his hands. They shook slightly, as though he were trying to hold on to something slipping through his fingers. "What's happening to you?" she asked softly. Roberto stared at the floor for a long moment. He swallowed hard. "I'm not okay, Clara." 4 words she'd never expected to hear. Roberto had spent his entire life trying to be strong, unbreakable, a wall no one could knock down. Hearing him confess something like that felt like seeing the inside of a room that had been locked for decades. "I haven't been sleeping," he continued. "Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe. I'm afraid of losing everything, afraid of failing this family, afraid of being useless, afraid of becoming what my father was." A chill ran through Clara's body. Roberto never mentioned his father. She only knew fragments, poverty, violence, abandonment, painful memories he avoided at all costs. "When I try to control you," he paused and rubbed his face with both hands. "It's not because I think you're incapable. It's because if you grow, if you become independent, if you shine, I'm afraid I'll be left behind." Clara felt her throat tighten. It explained many things, but didn't erase the damage he caused. Still, hearing him speak honestly opened a space inside her she didn't realize was still there. "You don't lose me if I grow," she said firmly, "but you lose me if you try to shrink who I am." The words fell between them like truth finally finding its place. Roberto looked at her as if the sentence had struck something he'd hidden for years. Clara wasn't there to comfort or condemn. She was there to understand the road ahead. Because despite everything, she recognized pain when she saw it. And what was sitting in front of her wasn't a cruel man, just a man broken in ways he never confronted. Roberto ran a hand through his hair, exhaling deep. I don't know how to change. You don't need to know today, she replied, but you need to want to. The clock on the wall showed almost 3 in the morning. The house was quiet except for the soft tapping of rain on the roof. Clara stood and walked toward him. I want a life with you, she said, but I can't be small for that to happen. Roberto looked at her with a mix of fear and hope, like someone seeing a door they never believed they could open. Clara left him there with his thoughts scattered across the room. She knew that conversation wouldn't fix everything. But for the first time, Roberto had let her see what lived behind the harshness, and she had shown him that she no longer belonged to silence. That night, both of them carried wounds, but also a possibility. The air in the house felt different, lighter, as if something weary had finally exhaled. Clara returned to the bedroom with something she thought she had lost long ago: direction. She didn't have answers yet, but she had a beginning, and from that moment on, their lives would no longer follow the path they once knew. Clara woke before sunrise. The house was still, but it wasn't the suffocating silence from days before. This was a silence of anticipation, of something that needed to be spoken, even if it hurt. Her breathing felt deeper, as if her chest was slowly learning to reclaim its space. Daniel was still asleep, his face exhausted, unshaven, tense. He looked like someone fighting battles he never dared to name. Clara watched him for a moment, not with coldness, but with a new sense of clarity. Love wasn't just about staying. Sometimes it was about finding yourself so the other person could find themselves too. When he woke up, he found Clara at the kitchen table, holding a warm cup of tea. Her eyes were calm but resolute. We need to talk, she said softly. Daniel sat down slowly, fully aware that this moment carried more truth than many of their past conversations. I know. He swallowed. I don't know where to start. Clara took a deep breath. Then I'll start. And for the first time, she opened what she had hidden for so long. She spoke about the pain of feeling diminished, of being treated like someone who needed permission to exist. She spoke of losing herself, of the shame, of the loneliness she felt even while sharing the same roof. Daniel listened without interruptions. Every word seemed to hit him like a tide he could no longer hold back. When she finished, he covered his face with both hands, trembling. Clara, I never wanted to break you like this. His voice cracked. I'm falling apart. I didn't want to admit that to you. I'm scared. Scared of failing. Scared you'll realize you deserve someone better. Scared of not being enough. Clara's chest tightened, not from hurt, but from understanding. Daniel, I don't want perfect. I want true. The problem isn't your fear. The problem is turning it into a cage around me. He lowered his head, looking like someone who had never learned how to handle his own emotions. I tried to control everything because I was losing control of myself. Clara reached out and touched his hand, not to comfort, but to set a new boundary. I can't be your prison, Daniel, but I can stand beside you while you learn to break free from what hurts you. He broke down, crying not out of shame but out of relief. I need help, he admitted. Real help. Not just from you. I'm not okay, Clara, and I don't want to put this weight on you again. Clara felt strength rising inside her. Then we'll look for help together. But listen, this doesn't erase what happened. I need to see change, not promises. Daniel, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be someone you can be proud of. Someone you don't have to fear. Clara stood and opened the window. The sunlight finally entered the room, bathing them both. It felt like a reminder that new paths appear when truth is spoken without masks. She turned to him. I'm going out today. I want to walk, think, breathe on my own. He nodded. Go. I'll stay. I have a lot to sort out inside myself. Clara smiled softly. Then start, because I'm starting too. She picked up her purse, now filled with her own things, her own choices, and stepped outside. As she closed the door behind her, her heartbeat felt stronger, steadier. This wasn't escape. It was construction. Inside the house, Daniel looked at his reflection in the window. For the first time in years, he realized the man he wanted to be wasn't the man fear had forced him to become. And that realization opened a door he had never seen before. Clara walked through the city center as if she were relearning how to move. There was a soft and the sound of cars, people, stores opening. Everything felt more alive than it had in days. With each step, she sensed something inside her shifting into place, like a puzzle slowly finding its missing pieces. She entered a small cafe tucked between two old shops. the smell of fresh coffee wrapped around her, bringing a forgotten comfort. She sat by the window, watching the world flow outside. A young waitress approached. "You look tired," she said, not with judgment, but with honesty. Clara gave a faint smile. "It's been a long few days." The waitress nodded knowingly. Sometimes we step outside just to remember who we are, when we're not trying to be strong all the time. The sentence hit Clara like truth spoken at the exact right moment. "You're right," Clara whispered. While waiting for her coffee, she opened her purse. Inside, she found an old notebook filled with sketches, half-formed ideas, pieces of the dreams she once. Her chest tightened slightly. "I loved this. I was good at this." The coffee arrived. The warmth settled inside her like something healing slowly. Then she noticed a poster taped to the counter. Design and illustration course. Registration open. Weekend classes. Her heart skipped. For a moment, she simply stared. A version of herself she hadn't seen in years seemed to look back at her. But then, the doubt came. Money? Daniel? Responsibilities? She breathed slowly. For the first time, she thought not about what she might lose, but what she could reclaim. Moments later, she walked to the counter. "Is the course still open for registration?" The attendant smiled. "It is. Want the form?" Clara held the paper gently, as if it carried a new beginning. She didn't fill it out yet, but placed it carefully inside her note. Stepping outside, she felt a subtle but powerful shift inside her. She turned the corner and stumbled onto an art fair in the plaza. Local artists had set up easels, tables, small stands, paintings, illustrations, crafts, a world she loved and had abandoned. She felt pulled toward a table where an older woman was selling hand-painted canvases. "They're beautiful," Clara said. The woman smiled. "It took me years to gather the courage to show them. Each one is a part of my story, a part I hid for too long." Clara hesitated before asking, "What made you stop hiding?" The woman glanced at her painting, then at Clara. "Life moved fast, and one day I realized, if I didn't show what was inside me, no one would ever know who I truly was." Those words settled inside Clara like they belonged there. When she returned home, the sun was high. She felt different. She felt alive. Not because of Daniel, not because of anything outside, but because she had reconnected with herself. Inside, Daniel was still on the couch, but now holding a notebook. He stood when he saw her. "Clara, I scheduled a therapy appointment for tomorrow. I want real change." Clara felt something shift. Not forgiveness, but recognition. "That's good, Daniel." He took a deep breath. "I also want to support you. Whatever you want, studying, working, creating. I want you to have your world back." "I can't take that from you again." Clara pulled the folded form from her bag. "I found this today." Daniel read it. His eyes softened with something genuine. "You'll shine in that world again," he whispered. Clara smiled. It wasn't closure. It wasn't the end. It was the first step toward a life where she would never disappear again. Clara walked back home that afternoon with slow steps, as if every movement required gentleness. Her conversation with Daniel still echoed inside her like an unsettled wind. It wasn't fear or distrust, just the strange awareness that an entire cycle was unraveling, while another one quietly formed ahead of her. Change was never silent. It shook, pulled, rearranged. And inside that house, everything was beginning to shift. When she opened the door, she saw Daniel sitting on the sofa, holding a brown envelope. He looked tense, but not with the same rigid tension she had grown used to. This was different, more vulnerable, almost childlike. When he noticed her, he stood up immediately. "I thought I should show you this," he said, extending the envelope. Clara took it, cautiously. Inside, she found overdue bills, a collection notice, and a handwritten note she recognized instantly. Daniel's father's handwriting. The note was short. "I can't help anymore. You need to sort your life out." Clara looked up. "Daniel, you're in debt?" He exhaled deeply, as if holding back the shame before it spilled. "I am, and I hid it, because I didn't want you to think I was weak, or careless, or incapable." Clara felt a sting in her chest. Not anger, something else. A realization of a pattern she hadn't noticed before. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. "Because I've already messed up so much. And when I started realizing how much I controlled you." He paused. "It was easier to watch you than to admit the chaos I had inside." Silence filled the room, not the cold silence of the past, but a living one that forced them both to breathe slower. Clara sat at the table. Daniel, I can't carry your monsters, but I also can't stop you from fighting them. He nodded, eyes glassy. I know. And that's why I made that therapy appointment. Because I realized if I don't change now, I never will. And I want to try. For me, and for us. If you still see in us. Meaning it. He nodded, lips tight. I'd like to enroll. The woman checked the information. Classes start Saturday. You only need your basic materials. Clara nodded. I'll be here. As the registration was processed, Clara looked around. Paintings by former students hung on the walls. Vibrant colors, bold lines, stories and courage in each stroke. Warmth filled her chest. Not nostalgia. Belonging. When she stepped outside, the sunlight felt different. Not because the world had changed, but because she had changed the way she saw it. Her phone rang. It was Daniel. She answered calmly. You left early, he said softly. I went to turn in my form. I'm enrolled. A short silence followed, full of meaning. Clara, I'm proud of you. She smiled. Daniel, I need something now. Anything. Walk with me. But don't hold me back. He exhaled on the other end. I'm trying, and I'll keep trying. Clara didn't promise anything. She didn't offer guarantees. She just kept walking, finally understanding that to bloom, she needed to choose her own light. And for the first time in a long time, Clara didn't feel small. She felt present. She felt whole. Clara woke up earlier than usual. The soft morning light slipped through the curtains and illuminated the form on the table, as if the paper itself were calling her. It was just a printed sheet, yet it carried a weight no ordinary object could. Inside it lived a border between the woman who survived and the woman who wanted to finally live. She took a deep breath. The house was quiet, and that silence was no longer frightening. It was space. It was choice. Daniel was still asleep, curled on his side, and Clara watched him for a moment. There was no anger, but there were no guarantees either. What existed now was a strange new clarity. She knew her path from here was forward, even if she wasn't sure he would walk beside her. She made coffee and sat in front of the form. Her hands trembled a little, not from fear, from expectation. She picked up the pen, wrote her name, then her address. And slowly the paper came alive with her handwriting, as if it were being filled at the same pace she was. When she finished, she set the pen down gently and realized she was smiling. A small smile, but deep. A smile of returning to herself. She got dressed, tied her hair back, and placed the folded form carefully in her bag. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed something different. Not in her appearance, in her eye. There was firmness where hesitation once lived. Just as she was about to, Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face still marked by sleep. Are you taking the form today? He asked softly. Clara nodded. Yes, I think. This is the first thing I'm doing for myself in a long time. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, nervous. Clara, I know I've been a heavy anchor. I'm trying. I want you to know that. She breathed slowly without harshness. I know you're trying, Daniel, but my path can't stop while you learn to walk. I need this, she said, touching the bag where the form rested. He nodded, eyes lowered, like someone understanding a truth they can't fully see. Clara stepped outside. The morning wind smelled like change. As she walked toward the enrollment center, each step felt more certain. The world around her was vibrant, vendors opening their stalls, children running to school, the city moving with life. For the first time in a long while, Clara felt aligned with the rhythm of that world. When she reached the building, she stopped before the glass door. Her reflection stared back. A simple woman, tired, but with a spark glowing in her chest. She pushed the door. Inside, a cheerful woman greeted her. Design and illustration course? Enrolling today? Clara pulled the form from her bag. Her heart pounded. Yes, I want to hand this in. The woman received the paper, checked it, and stamped it. The sound of the stamp echoed like a milestone, a small crack dividing Clara's life into two parts. All set, the woman said. First class is on Saturday. Clara blinked, surprised by how simple something she had feared for so long could be. That's it? That's it, the woman replied with a smile. Clara left the building slowly, almost floating. Her eyes brimmed with tears she wiped away discreetly. She had almost missed all of this. She had almost kept dimming her own colors to fit into someone else's shadow. Not today. Today, she had chosen. As she turned the corner, she pulled out her phone and sent a single message to Daniel. I delivered the form. He saw it and replied, I'm proud of you. Clara put the phone away, lifted her face, and let the sunlight warm her skin. The first step was taken, and this time belonged to her. The sun that morning felt brighter than usual. Clara woke up early, even before her alarm, with that strange and powerful feeling that the day carried a different weight, a meaning of its own. She got up slowly, breathing deeply, as she looked at the course enrollment form resting on the table. It was just a sheet of paper, but to her, it was the exact border between who she had been and who she was becoming. Daniel was still asleep, lying on his stomach the way he did when he was too tired to keep his walls up. After his first therapy session, he had become quieter, more thoughtful, more observant. Clara noticed the change, subtle, almost shy, but real. Even so, she knew, his growth could no longer be the compass guiding her life. Every step she took from now on had to be for her, because of her, and toward her. She dressed simply, tied her hair, grabbed her notebook, and the form. She felt a pinch in her chest, nerves, maybe, fear too, but above everything, a kind of courage that didn't come from shouting or confrontation, but from a new kind of serenity. Clara was determined. As she stepped outside, the morning wind touched her face like something clearing a path for her. The walk to the cafe felt different now. It wasn't escape. It wasn't search. It was direction. When she entered, the same waitress from before smiled. Back to finish what you started? She asked. Clara smiled back, her eyes steady. I came to deliver what finally began to exist. She sat by the window again. The coffee arrived quickly, and as the steam rose from the cup, Clara opened the form. She read every line, every field, as if reading a message to her own future, and with steady hands, she began to write her name, her information, her choices. Each letter forming her name felt like a petal opening, revealing layers she had thought were lost. When she finished, she placed the form inside the envelope and breathed deeply. That was it. No turning back. But for the first time, she didn't want to turn back. Leaving the cafe, she walked to the building where the course would take place. It was modest, with light walls and wide windows. Outside, a few people chatted, holding sketch folders and bags filled with brushes. Clara felt her heart race. It was as if she were stepping into a territory that had always belonged to her, one she had left behind, or maybe abandoned when she stopped believing in herself. Inside the reception area, she said, I'm here to submit my form. The attendant checked the envelope. Clara, classes start Saturday. You'll love this course. Lots of hands-on work, lots of creation. She smiled. Welcome back to your world. Clara thanked her and left. She hadn't realized it, but silent tears were running down her cheeks. Not tears of pain, tears of return. When she got home, she found Daniel in the living room, sitting on the couch with a distant gaze. When he saw her, he stood up immediately. You submitted it? He asked, a mix of anxiety and fear in his voice. I did, she replied, with a steadiness that surprised even herself. Daniel inhaled deep. I'm happy for you, truly. She felt no weight in his words. They were sincere, but it was also the first time she felt she wasn't waiting for his approval. It was as if she were listening to the world inside her, not outside. Daniel took a step forward. Clara, I know I hurt you. I know I diminished you. And I know that for a long time I was someone who erased you without realizing it. He wiped his face. But you're coming back to life. And I need to figure out if I can keep up with that without holding you down. Clara breathed deeply. Daniel, I don't want to run ahead of you, but I can't stay still anymore. Whatever I do from now on will be for me. If you want to walk beside me, good. If not, I'll walk anyway. He nodded slowly, tears forming. I want to try. Clara smiled. Small, calm, real. Then start by being someone who walks with yourself. The rest, time will show. And in that moment, Clara understood that submitting the form wasn't just enrolling in a course. It was stepping back into her own life.